The Second Amendment is a topic that could easily take up an entire show. Americans are constitutionally guaranteed the right to bear arms, we know that, but some of the questions surrounding that guarantee are: when does someone lose that right? When can the government limit it? And just what kind of firearms are we talking about? A lot of issues now from Newtown and everywhere else. But Senator Feldman, I want to start with you. We've got 3 bills in Santa Fe. Of course, we saw the segment here just a little bit ago with our producer, Matt Grubbs. Let's parse these things out in detail. We've got Representative Zach Cook's bill that would make it legal to carry firearms into liquor establishments or places where there's alcohol involved. This is not the first time for this bill, and I've always been kind of curious why it feels like a liquor establishment has to be the place where people should be the most concerned with bringing guns. Not trying to be a wise guy about it, but from your point of view, in this particular bill, Mr. Cook's bill, what happens there with allowing guns in liquor establishments? Any downside here?
Well, first of all, we have allowed guns in almost every establishment, including schools and daycare centers and churches and shopping malls and movie theaters. These are concealed carry weapons. And you know, it's typical that liquor stores are held up by folks because they have a large amount of cash. And so we have in the past kind of drawn a hard line about liquor stores and bars, particularly people who are intoxicated carrying guns. I mean, we have all kinds of laws about people who are intoxicated driving vehicles. What about carrying guns? So the history of the New Mexico legislature, however, is that, you know, every step of the way we have gone along with the NRA. We have allowed less and less training for the carriers of concealed weapons. We have allowed more and more places in which you can carry a weapon. And really, these are for concealed carry. Those folks do have some training, but in New Mexico, we have to remember, this is the Wild West. This is a place where most owners of guns are unlicensed. The guns are unregistered. They need not be stored safely. And where we have, I think it's the 6th highest number of gun deaths in the country and the 4th highest rate of youth suicide with guns. So we have rolled over, and I guess this latest bill is we're rolling over a little bit more into the bar. And I'm just hopeful that we will not have more casualties as a result.
Yeah. Did this come up, Dan, when you were in the House? This bill, versions of this have been around for a long time.
I never saw this. We did concealed carry when I was in. So that was towards the end of my time in the legislature. So before that, it was always the fight about getting concealed carry in New Mexico.
Right.
So I think all of these movements are, have been since I left the legislature.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Go ahead, Al. Your thoughts on this, and we're going to take another one on here.
Sure. Representative Cook's introduced this for several years in a row, and and I think he comes at it from his perspective, from a good place. To me, one of the biggest concerns, just honestly, is that guns and alcohol don't mix.
Okay.
I mean, and you hear about people in nightclubs in the East Coast and guns and getting shot. Plaxico Burress, a famous football player, and I worry about a large number of people in a small environment with alcohol, making poor decisions, allowing arguments that should be nothing more than fist fights or shoving matches escalating into something more dangerous and more precarious, not just for the gun owner, but for the other patrons and for law enforcement personnel. And at the bottom line, this, Gene, you said at the very beginning that we have a right to bear arms, and that's true. The Supreme Court has said so. But it's not an unfettered right. Just like you have a right to free speech. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, you don't have the right to yell fire in a crowded theater. You don't have the right to certain types of fully automatic weapons. The Congress has the right to regulate some types of weapons. The state has the right to regulate them. Just because you have a right to bear an arm is not an unfettered right to all types of arms, all types of munitions, everything. I mean, I can't have a bazooka. I mean, You know, I mean, we shouldn't have those rights.
I'm going to stop you there because I'm only interested. I'm going to double back to Dan here in a quick second. I want to say something about that, but I want to get Sophie in
just
here.
fine, just listen.
All right, there you go. Let's go to another one, and I hear you on Zach Cook's bill. Let's move to Representative Miguel Garcia's got a bill that is more concerned with, and you hear this a lot about who gets to have a gun, meaning who's impaired, who's mentally impaired, all the things, the mental health issues
Sure.
that are now coming to the surface. Does this get at, as you read the language here, does this get at some of those issues?
It's a start. I think that there has been a lot of discussion of background checks, limiting the people
Right.
who can
Gun show
get
loopholes,
guns,
all
et cetera,
that.
the loopholes.
Right.
Certainly, I think we have some conflict between the right to privacy and these background checks, because if we are in fact sharing large quantities of data about people's personal health, that's something that we need to sort out really carefully before we get all the way. But there is tremendous support nationwide for improved background checks, for tightening up those gun show loopholes. All of that is extraordinarily popular. And to the point before about how, and your actually earlier question about, we have this right to bear arms, but what are the limits to that? In some ways, I've started to feel like the limits are the bravery of our legislatures, the willingness of our Congress to step forward and do what so many people in their districts, their constituents, have said they want. They want better background checks.
Right.
They want better gun standards.
Polls nationally hugely.
It's
yeah.
been incredible. And so whatever it is that's causing that paralysis, we have different theories apparently about that around the table. I look to our legislators to overcome that. And I think that Representative Garcia's bill is a nice step forward.
You know, it's interesting, part of the bill language he's got here, Representative Garcia, is requiring background checks by the Department of Public Safety prior to the transfer of firearms by persons other than licensed gun dealers. That's an interesting bit there when you think about it, Senator Feldman.
Well,
the other than part there.
Well, I was very heartened by the fact that Gordon Eden, who was the Department of Public Safety, came out and applauded President Obama's move to make some of this information much more readily available to state and local officials.
Yes.
So I think it is not just legislators, I think it is law enforcement too that can use this information judiciously. And I think they will.
Let me hold you there for a second, 'cause I want to get to Nora Espinosa's bill as well. She's the third leg of our deal here. Representative Espinosa, it's just prohibiting the enforcement of federal firearm laws. And this is the one that got a kerfuffle
So
going over the weekend.
it sounded like you said reinforcement, but it's prohibiting the enforcement.
Right.
Yeah, reinforcement would be like, we're going to do it twice. and what Representative Espinosa is saying is, we're not going to do it at all. And if you try to do it,
That's right.
federal officials, you're going to be in a world of New Mexico-style pain.
That's right. I mean, thank you for that clarification,
Yeah.
because the enforcement of this and who actually gets to enforce what is very interesting. And Representative Mo Maestas over the weekend had a very interesting bit on television saying, well, this would make FBI officers in violation of the law if this passed. What was your sense of
Well,
what
you
we're
know,
trying to get at here?
there has to be a partnership between the state government and the federal government. If the state officials step in and say, we don't need to enforce federal law, then, I think that was the position of many states before the Civil War. And so I saw in the paper where Representative Chasey said this is the kind of thing that you would need a civil war first to establish the rights of the states to do
Secession's not
something
far
like
behind.
that.
Right, but also is frowned upon generally. Secession's not such a great
So where does this all bring us, Dan? We've got three local bills, but we've got a bigger issue that Al made reference to that I felt you were reacting to a little bit. And that is the idea of who has the right to own what kind of weapon in this country. And what the president's trying to do that Senator Feldman just brought up, other things going on out there. Where are we headed in New Mexico for gun control?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to discuss in a very short amount of time. Obviously, I think Representative Espinosa is trying to jump in front of President Obama, who's basically said, I don't care if Congress doesn't act, I'm going to do things by executive order. And I know the bill doesn't just address the executive orders, but that's what it is. We got a president of the United States who has said, I understand what the Constitution says, I understand it requires an act of Congress, but if those people refuse to do it, I'll just through fiat do it as an executive order. And I think that's as problematic as a lot of things that are
I
out
don't think
there.
that's what the president
That's
said.
not
exactly what the president
right.
said.
Not exactly what the
And it's
president
within
This is what the president
within
said.
his purview as a.
That's right, to usurp the Constitution
That's
and
not-
do
that's
what he
not
wants
what
to
the
do.
president-
It's
come on,
exactly
David.
what the
That's
president
insane.
said.
The president
But let's go
said-
back to
that's not what he said.
some of Representative Park's examples. Plaxico Burress. Isn't that one of the most strictest states with gun laws there are in the nation, and they still have gun crime there?
New York State.
Is New York State. So the example is, and this is a problem with gun laws in New Mexico and nationally. We don't want to have the discussion about why these problems are. We just want to pass more and more laws and say, oh, well, you know, if we make it hard for someone to buy a gun at a gun show, then you ask them, how many crimes have been committed by guns that were acquired at a gun show? No one can give you the number. Well, we don't really know. These are guns, these are
don't track
crimes
the
We're not
being
allowed to
carried.
track that.
We know exactly, other than the criminals that don't have registered guns. Those guns that people are buying are registered firearms. They're not going through a background check. It is a registered firearm. And if you guys took the time to understand what a registered firearm means, you'd know that they'd be able to do this. The problem is we have a huge schism here, and it's the fact that liberals don't want to address the root causes of these problems. They want to pass the laws.
Let's go to
and
root
think
cause.
they can address them
Let's
that
go to
way.
root cause. Fair enough. Let's go to root cause. Mental health issues I brought up earlier, things like that. I've not seen Republicans propose a bill that deal with the mental health aspects of this here in New Mexico or anywhere else, it seems to me. It doesn't seem like it should be part of the mix. I hear a lot of Republicans talking about this, that this is the root cause, as you say. But where's the legislation to help out with that?
Well, I didn't say that just mental health was the root cause. There's vast problems. There's lots of people that commit these crimes that there's no signs of mental health prior to them committing this crime. So I'm not sure unless
we
we're
heard
going
that
to have.
from Ms. Espinosa and Mr. Cook. Was mental health issues were, it seemed to me watching it, was the root cause here. That we've got to get after this before we get after any.
Well, I think
any
mental
ownership.
health is a problem. The problem is, as you heard from Secretary Eaton, is we don't have this sharing of information. Sure, we're going to do these background checks. If you've been committed, if you've got some sort of a crime that says you're prone to be this, we don't know. If you're someone that's having other issues, it's hard to get your hands around how do you get that information to pass. If you're somebody who's seeking help, hasn't been committed, hasn't committed a crime, but you have these mental health issues, how do you get that information to the gun dealer in Roswell before he sells that person a gun?
That's a legit point. We got about 30 seconds. Go ahead and finish up with that, if you would.
I mean, I think the whole point is it's not just limited in terms of mental health towards gun ownership. It's overall mental health in this country. And the fact of the matter is that every time we talk about mental health parity, we pass laws, we still don't have it. We still don't do it. Anyone who suffers from any type of mental health issue is, they're embarrassed. They consider themselves second-class citizens, and they're treated poorly. And we need to understand that it is an illness, just like heart disease or cancer and what have you. And until we fully start funding our health insurance for mental health issues for an early age, we are going to continue to have these types of problems.
So if you
We're gonna-
impose another law
10
like
seconds.
this,
Go ahead.
how do you, if you start doing this, we talk about the mental health, people who don't have these problems but are afraid to admit that they're being treated for something or taking certain types of prescriptive drugs, you're going to give another opportunity for them to be highlighted as a second-class citizen. So again, I think it's the fact that we failed to address the root cause. You look at the worst cities in this country for gun crimes. They're the cities with the most strict gun laws.
Because they've had
How does
to
that happen?
enact those gun
Those laws
laws
were
in
not
order
enacted
to
a year
attempt
ago.
it.
Those, Chicago,
These
New
are
York,
important gun laws.
no,
You are
they've had these
confusing
laws for
cause with
10,
effect
15
here.
years.
Exactly, because it's been that bad. But if you're New York and 2 states over, you can pick up any kind of rifle you want and bring it back into New York, you can't control your borders that way. We need comprehensive nationwide gun control in order to address this issue. And all we're doing here is moving the pieces around the board, claiming that it's mental health, all of that. We need comprehensive.
It's a package.
It's a
You
Yes,
have to have a package
exactly.
that includes just some common sense gun safety rules, storing your guns safely, making sure there's a lock, and then work on the root cause.
I'm going to hold us there. That's interesting. I'm glad we took a little extra time. We'll see how this all plays out. We'll be back with possible public pension fixes and then to tackle the week's other headlines on the clock.